It's the eve of the return of the former king. There's a little Lord of the Rings Easter egg for you. De'Aaron Fox returning to Sacramento with his San Antonio Spurs Friday night on national television inside the Golden One Center. That is going to be very emotionally charged, to say the least. Chris Watkins from SacTown Sports 1140 joins me to preview that game, what we expect from Fox, what we expect from the crowd, and we'll discuss a dilemma when it comes to removing the interim tag from head coach Doug Christie. It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I'm excited. I'm excited for Friday. It's going to be a fun night, an emotional night, maybe a hostile night at times. It's no secret. I'm a fan of De'Aaron Fox. I've enjoyed covering De'Aaron Fox in the 8 years or whatever it was that he was here in Sacramento. I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm looking forward to getting this return over with in some capacity. And I'm looking forward to the Sacramento Kings beating him and sending him back to San Antonio with that bad team that's going to miss the playoffs and probably, quite frankly, wants to miss the playoffs at this point, with Victor Wembanyama being out the remainder of the season, right? They're interested in draft lottery odds. But if the Spurs can rally to win one more game this season, this is the game they want to get. They want to get this win for their boy De'Aaron. They want to back him up against the Sacramento Kings and a fan base that feels a certain type of way. I think we're going to get a real fan base divided. A lot of boos, a lot of cheers and support. So I'm looking forward to this game, and I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. Chris Watkins, SacTown Sports 1140. You can hear him on the Return of the Roar podcast, which is now live on Tuesdays on SacTown Sports. He is a phenomenal contributor, host. I mean, he does it all, really, at SacTown Sports. We used to work together there when I was in radio before moving to ABC 10. Always excited to have Chris Watkins on the show. So please enjoy my conversation with Chris as we talk about Fox's return and everything in between. Chris Watkins, the last time you and I did a podcast together, we pissed Kings fans off during that 7-game win streak that Doug Christie was on because we were concerned about how well that success would last. Turn out we were kind of right, but here the Kings are. They're playing, I think, their best basketball of the season. Tough loss last night to the Denver Nuggets. I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit. But now the attention turns to Friday, a very emotionally charged game with De'Aaron Fox making his return to Sacramento. So, Chris, let's piss off Kings fans again and talk about, see, he's got Fox on the shirt. Let's piss off Kings fans again and talk about De'Aaron Fox's return, what we expect. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to this game from a media standpoint, right? The stories tell themselves. We know how dangerous a pissed off De'Aaron Fox can be, and you best believe he's going to be pissed off based off of everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks. But when you think about Friday, the build up to this game and what you're expecting inside the Golden One Center, like what's the first thing that comes to mind for you with Fox's return?
Energy, I guess, is just the word. And that's from all fronts. Like De'Aaron's energy, like you just mentioned, like it's going to be really interesting to see if he kind of brings that mad Fox anger, that frustration that we've kind of seen sporadically throughout the years that, frankly, I think a lot of Kings fans both loved and got incredibly frustrated by. And I think I would be very prepared for, even if De'Aaron, has the greatest game of his life, he has, 35 points, 40 points. People are just going to dismiss it and say, see, like, that's what you're capable of, Mad Fox. This is what we always wanted, and, just had to pull it out of you, whatever. But, and then, of course, on the other side, the flip side, the energy from the crowd is going to be something that I I just kind of can't wait for. Like Matt, I know you're somebody who used to just kind of go to Arco just, because it was something to do after school some days. And you definitely spent some time in that building where, there would be pointless games going on, but the crowd still would kind of make these completely irrelevant games into something. There's extreme examples like the Here We Stay night, which I believe was against the Utah Jazz or the Clippers or something like that. Like, again, just a game 65 in a regular season, but something that I think everybody kind of remembers completely different. And I think, frankly, I think Friday is going to be one of those nights where the crowd is going to make it into an event. It might be similar to another time when I think it was 2 seasons ago when Marvin Bagley returned as a Detroit Piston, and we weren't really expecting that kind of reaction. But and when I say every single time, I mean if Marvin Bagley, if the ball brushed past his fingertips, the entire crowd was booing him. And it just created an energy and an atmosphere that it kind of felt like I was watching Gladiator or something, where it was just this man in an arena and a whole crowd of people rooting for the lion to kind of tear his head off. And I don't know, like I kind of expect, I don't know what to expect, actually. Like, I think that's a possibility for Friday, is that there's a whole crowd of people who bought tickets just to let De'Aaron Fox know how they felt. But I also think that there's been a lot of times throughout Kings history, and I think just history in general, where, there's a loud vocal minority or what ends up being a loud vocal minority that we see on social media. And then when you actually get face to face and you get in the building, completely different reaction. So I'm just kind of intrigued to see what the energy from the crowd is going to be like on Friday, because I think either way, it's going to be a really, really special night. And I think that's what I can confidently say.
I think it's going to be a crowd divided. Like, yeah. I thought that there would be some boo birds, and noticeable in the sense that, okay, yeah, you can hear a smattering of boos, but for the most part, the applause and the cheering would for the most part drown it out.
Yeah.
And I based that off of like you talked about, like the really loud vocal minority of Kings fans on social media that have this venom towards De'Aaron Fox with how everything went down. But at the end of that Charlotte Hornets game, when Fox's 100%. Picture showed up and the impulse reaction was a boo, because unlike this game on Friday, everybody knows Fox is coming. Everybody knows the tribute video's coming. Everybody knows the intro's coming. So people are like premeditating their response. That was a impulse reaction. People saw his face and booed.
Matt, I've been thinking a lot about that moment. They were up 40.
Yeah.
They were up 40.
Right.
And people, like you just said, felt the impulse to boo when their team was up 40 at home. And, I think the perfect, like, if anyone hasn't seen that moment, to me, all you need to see is Doug Christie in that moment, who the entire coaching staff, like, they're going to commercial because there's a timeout called, as you said, like, there's a timeout. They show the graphic. So they show the coaches as they're kind of about to head to commercial. They're all huddling up. And all of a sudden, they're, like, looking around like, what could this crowd possibly be booing at when we're up 40? So, yeah, I mean, that moment for me changed my entire perception of how Friday could go.
I love that moment because, like, Doug's an absolute professional, but there's that moment of realization where he looks up and he sees Fox, and you kind of see him go, oh, and then go right back to coach mode. He's like,
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I got to coach. But I really think it's going to be a crowd divided. I'm not suggesting there's going to be fights or anything like that, but I'm going to be scanning the crowd because I wonder how many Kings or Fox lovers are going to be sitting next to Fox haters, and just the reactions are going to be so different. And now when the game begins and Fox touches the basketball, at that point, I expect the entire crowd to kind of be on Fox and you're the enemy now, and Kings got to win this basketball game. But I think in that initial moment when the return happens and the announcement happens, I'm going to be paying very close attention, not just to the verbal reactions of the crowd, but just looking at how Kings fans are interacting with each other, because Fox is, of course, a polarizing figure in Sacramento. And I'm really anxious to see, like, how that reaction plays off, how Fox plays off that reaction. Because I think back to like when Buddy Hield got booed and Tyrese Halliburton is with him in Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton's booing him on the bench. So they could kind of play it off in kind of a fun way. I don't know if Fox is going to play this off in any kind of fun way. I think it's going to get under his skin.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. From De'Aaron's standpoint, 100%. I mean, I think I already saw a comment that he had earlier today about, just kind of, for the crowd that cheers, like, appreciate it. Thanks for the love. But for those who are going to, like, he straight up says, for those who are going to go and boo, like, he's preparing for people to boo. He knows that it's not just people are upset. Like, he knows what he could potentially walk into. He pretty much just said, like, forget y'all. Like, and I think that's very much De'Aaron Fox that we have come to know over the years, is he's very much not here for it. And I think he's going to act like it doesn't bother him. I think we'll see in his play whether or not it does or doesn't. But, it's funny you kind of mentioned the Tyrese Halliburton thing, because I think the result that I'm hoping for, and it's maybe kind of wishing, for the best possible, rainbows and sunshines universe, is that we can kind of make it into more of a pro wrestling thing than something that actually starts to feel like it's personal. Exactly. Yeah. Like, if we can have moments where, sure, maybe it's split when De'Aaron Fox gets his name called by Scott Moak. I kind of am expecting that. Like you said, when the ball's tipped, I fully expect people to boo, and I think that's fine. And I think that's kind of where the pro wrestling element can come. But when De'Aaron Fox's tribute video gets played, the entire crowd better be standing on their feet and clapping, because at the end of the day, I think the part, and I know all the emotions are still really raw, but like, this is a guy who stayed here, who was drafted here, and he brought this team to the playoffs, and that definitely deserves some amount of respect. And it's something that this franchise, this organization has been waiting, or had to wait 17 years for, is for a player that was good enough. And you could say it was DeMarcus Cousins too, but those were the two players really of this post playoff or this playoff drought generation for the Kings. De'Aaron Fox and DeMarcus Cousins are the two homegrown talents, one of which wasn't able to bring this team to the playoffs. The other one, Matt, we were just talking before this show started off air about leaving a place leaving somewhere in a better place than you first got there. Like, De'Aaron Fox, 100% left he got the Kings to the playoffs, made it to their proverbial promised land, but also left the organization. Regardless what you think of the separation, they're in a better, light years better place now than they were when De'Aaron Fox first entered there. And you could maybe argue that for DeMarcus Cousins, that wasn't necessarily the case.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Who is in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. Therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times. It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and becoming the best version of yourself. It's all about learning how to ask for help, right? I've experienced this from going and seeing my therapist, TJ, since really COVID. I've seen firsthand how valuable it is to have a support system that keeps you grounded and motivated. There are everyday benefits to therapy that kind of go under the radar, right? We think about therapy and we think about the massive traumas or the massive struggles that someone might be going through and how therapy can help you with that. But therapy is a tool for self-improvement, stress management, navigating life's challenges. It helps you build that success in daily life. Also, BetterHelp is convenient and accessible. This is important. It's fully online, making it easier than ever to connect with a licensed therapist from anywhere. With over 30,000 professionals available, you can find the right fit and switch anytime at no extra cost. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Fox drops at least 30, right?
You would think, but I was just looking at his numbers before we started recording. Since he got to San Antonio, he's at 19.3 a game. He's 43% from the field, 26% from three since joining the Spurs. He's had a really rough time. That team is pretty terrible, frankly, surrounding him right now. I mean, he's got Bismack Biyombo, who is his center right now, who I believe was drafted was technically the Kings draft pick instead of Jimmer Fredette.
Yep.
So that tells you how long Bismack Biyombo, and like Bismack Biyombo hasn't been, it's not like DeAndre Jordan out there. It's not like he had a stint of time where that name meant something. Like Bismack Biyombo has been a career bench player, and he's pretty much started 9 of De'Aaron's 13 games since he got to San Antonio. So that's the kind of situation De'Aaron's in right now. You could definitely use that and say, yeah, like of course De'Aaron's going to go crazy, but I do kind of think that Doug Christie especially is a little bit smarter than that and is going to kind of do whatever it takes to not have De'Aaron have that kind of game. And if it is going to be a 30-point game, it's probably going to be on 25 shots or something like that.
Well,
I think they're going to try and make it really tough for him.
That's the thing. I can see De'Aaron Fox drop 40 even and the Kings win by 15. I could easily see it because I know Stephon Castle had a really big game the other night. Like the rest of that roster doesn't really spook you. They're going to have an energy and they're going to have a charge too. Because you're booing our boy. We're going to show up for our boy too.
Yeah, they know what it means to him too.
But even with Domantas Sabonis not playing, Malik Monk is questionable or is probably going to be questionable for that game. I would expect Monk is going to do everything in his power to play in that game for obvious reasons. I don't think the Kings should be concerned. In fact, I said this last night, Chris, like from the Sacramento perspective, yes, we should all be concerned about pissed off De'Aaron Fox because we've seen it before. We know how damn good he is when you piss him off. But on the flip side, the San Antonio Spurs, who are not a good team right now, they should be looking at the Sacramento Kings and going, oh, the Kings are probably going to be pissed off because of how that Denver game last night ended, right? Yeah. They were in full control in that game. They fell apart in the fourth quarter, some self-inflicted wounds for sure. And then the officiating was horrible. Terrible. So the Kings, I imagine, assuming, and this is maybe a big assumption for the Kings, but assuming they can find a way to bring the way that they've played on the road home, because that's a big if, but if they can do that, the Golden One Center is going to respond to them in a major way. If the Kings can keep playing this type of basketball, the Spurs should be very concerned about a pissed off Kings team coming into the Golden One Center on Friday night.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you I've been incredibly impressed and surprised with how they've been playing, especially on this road trip. Like, I thought going 500 on the road trip would have been an accomplishment.
Agreed.
And the fact that they leave 3-1 with the realest chance of going 4-0 on that road trip, there's nothing you can really critique, or I'm sorry, you can critique, but there's nothing you can really, honestly, truthfully take bad from that stretch. They're playing great basketball right now. I mean, I looked it up. Yeah, their last 5 games, they're third in the entire league in offensive rating, first in defensive rating, which I think is the key thing there. And last night was really the thing that impressed me the most is without Domantas Sabonis, without Malik Monk, maybe there's a connection there, but they played some fantastic defense, and they made it really tough on Jokic. Obviously, Doug kind of starting to flex his coaching muscles a little bit, putting Keegan on Jokic for a big part of that game, and kind of having Jonas play that drop coverage, kind of playing everything else behind him. So Jokic kind of doesn't have those passing lanes that we've seen him kill us with. Helps that Aaron Gordon didn't play last night either, but definitely feel like this team is starting to gel. Whatever this current group of guys is going to be, it feels like they're really starting to come together, and they understand that they're in the thick of a playoff race right now. And I think San Antonio is kind of on the outside looking in, and it would be pretty massive accomplishment, obviously, with Victor Wembanyama shut down for the rest of the season. Be a huge accomplishment for them to even start to sniff the play-in. So, at this point in the season, you kind of start to see teams going different directions, and I would hope that the Kings, after that road trip, and again, DeMar had some quotes after the game yesterday that, I think you mentioned earlier, you definitely would want to be in the building on Friday, because it sounds like these guys are absolutely ready to go, regardless of opponent, and it does feel like they might try and make a statement on Friday. Like, it's not, they're very aware that Worldwide Wob has his little game, league pass rankings every game, and a lot of people are going to be excited on a national stage to see what De'Aaron Fox does in his return to Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm looking at last night's game, and I'm looking at how the Sacramento Kings play, and then I'm looking at this Friday game. This is really the last game that the Kings have before that death stretch begins. It starts with the Clippers on Sunday, which is going to be a massive game based off where these two teams are in the standings. And then it ends with that back-to-back between with the Celtics and Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, that's a stretch where man, you need every bit of wiggle room that you can get. And I need to see the Kings win a handful of those tough games with the Cavs coming to town, the Knicks coming to town, right? It's a gauntlet that they're about to go through. But like it's a cliche. Oh, it's a must win. It's a must win. The Sacramento Kings got to get this game on Friday. Like regardless of Fox's return and the emotional charge, like Doug Christie talks a lot about the faceless opponent, right? So we'll have all the celebrations or the boos or whatever. You'll have the tribute video. You'll have all this emotional charge. As soon as the game starts, though, Fox is faceless. Everybody else on the Spurs is faceless. The Kings need to be able to play the same way and handle. If they do that, I don't think this game is close. Like Fox gives us some moments, but I think the Kings should wipe the floor with the San Antonio Spurs, assuming they can keep playing the way that they've been playing on the road, right? The one thing that I've really, really liked in the Doug Christie era is not only have the Kings been beating teams they should be beating, they've been wiping the floor with them. The Spurs are another one of those teams. And I don't think the Spurs have any interest, truth be told, in winning at this point in time. Maybe for Fox, but that's it. Their season's over. They recognize they're still like a year away. Draft lottery odds, baby. That's all that they care about in San Antonio.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I feel like the Kings are really shaping up to be in the thick of this whatever postseason push you want to call it. Like they definitely have a chance for that 6th seed, and they have. Yeah, I don't know if I mean you really have to call. To an extent, all of these games must wins if they can get them for the Kings. Of course, I know what you're saying. Like San Antonio isn't one. The month of March is. It needs to be studied because it is the most brutal schedule I think I've ever seen. The Kings have something like 17 games in 31 days, and I think like 12 of those games are against the top 15 teams in the league or something crazy like that.
And back-to-backs. Like most of them are back-to-backs. So
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's so strange. And so, yeah, I guess in that sense, like you said, you have to beat teams that you should beat, and the Spurs are definitely on that list, especially with these injuries. But man, like I've been making graphics for standings watch after every Kings game, and it's just crazy to see how much fluctuation there is. But also, I mean, yeah, we're talking about 4 teams separated by a game and a half. And so every single night matters. These games where the Kings play the Warriors head to head, like those games matter so much. And that's why that Dallas game was absolutely massive for them to kind of really put Dallas in their rear view. They're pretty secure, it seems, in a postseason spot. It seems like they're going to get one of these play-in spots, but there's a chance, Golden State's probably going to have to start slipping sometime soon, but there's a chance the Kings can still get that 6th seed. And like you said, I mean, you have to take care of games like you have on Friday, and you're going to have to come up with some surprises through the month of March because, again, you're playing the OKC, you're playing the Celtics, you're playing, you already played Denver, like you're playing all of the best teams in the league still, and that's really, really tough considering where you're at this point in the season. All these teams are trying to jockey for a position.
Like I said at the top of the show, this episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great. It keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. You never miss your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Maybe the most important question of Friday night's game. Does Royale return? They've been teasing it with Fox there.
Yeah.
It's got to happen, right?
I wasn't at the last game where they apparently re-teased it. I was at the game where they nixed it, and there was a lot of chatter there. But I had to see on socials the other day that apparently, they've started to re-tease Al. I'll just say this. The Kings definitely spent money on a Royale mascot
They spent
costume.
a lot of money. They spent a lot of money.
At some point, that thing's getting rolled out. Like, there was a lot of, already video production. Like, Royale is coming at some point. There's a 0% chance that they're just calling it a sunk cost because their star player thought it was lame. Like, Royale's coming at some point. It might be Friday. But I kind of feel like at this point, like, you've ruined everything about, like, I mean, you've definitely turned it into a meme and into something else, but like, I don't know, like, it could have been something that lasted more than just this season. I think if you could have kind of been a reoccurring guest, little Slamson, if you will. But yeah, it feels like if it's just going to be for shock value. And I don't know what that, maybe that'll be in some Kings fans, man cave or something in a couple of years.
But Fox killed him. Like, Fox was the guy that killed Royale.
Allegedly.
So
allegedly,
like,
got to sprinkle allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. Sorry, guilty or innocent until proven guilty. But we, like, you talked about wrestling earlier, and I'm a big wrestling nut job, so I always try and incorporate like wrestling storylines into sports. And I just have this image in my head of during Spurs intros. Not that they want to steal the thunder away from Fox in any kind of way, but
that'd be crazy.
If there's just a robed figure that's just standing at the end of the Spurs intro, and when Fox is walking down after being announced, he just pulls his hood back and it's just Royale right there and just staring at him. Oh, come on. Or like, I mean, they would never do this because this would really piss Fox off. But I have this image in my head too of they're playing the tribute video and then it just like static cuts out and Royale's face shows up on the Jumbotron, just interrupts.
Like he's Joker or something or
that, or like it's like Undertaker. Oh my God. I would pop. I would lose it. They're never going to do this to Fox because they'll really truly piss him off. But Royale has to make an appearance and has to have some kind of moment with De'Aaron. And that's an area where I think De'Aaron will have fun with that kind of stuff. Because believe it or not, people don't believe it or not, De'Aaron Fox is a good dude. Like, Chris and I can attest, Fox is a good dude. He has like a lot of connections still with a lot of people here in Sacramento, a lot of people on that roster. So, but you best believe, like, as soon as that game starts, Fox wants to beat the crap out of the Kings for obvious reasons. And there's going to be a lot of like, I promise you, Domantas Sabonis is going to be fuming. He's sitting on the bench. I promise you, knowing the competitor that Domantas Sabonis is, like, I'm very much looking forward to it, Chris. But before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about a Doug Christie dilemma because you talked about Doug's game plan defensively last night. I thought it was perfection, right? And it worked so well of putting Keegan on Jokic and basically daring Denver to beat you from 3-point land. Of course, Russell Westbrook hits 4 freaking threes. It's like, okay, you can tip your cap. You can live with that, right? It didn't work out, but you can live with that. Like, Jonas Valanciunas almost had the same exact stat line as Nikola Jokic. Like, the game plan worked. I was ready when this thing was going on. I was like, remove the interim tag right now from Doug. Like this, like, I think he's done a phenomenal job. I don't know how many active full-time head coaches could do with this roster and these circumstances what Doug has done this season. He's just gone through the gauntlet and done a pretty good job. But the dilemma that I've always had with making Doug full-time, which I don't think they're going to do at any point this season. They'll do it this offseason. If there is any sort of question about the security of your front office, which I think still there is at this point, if you fire your front office and bring in a new one, but you force them to take on Doug Christie as their head coach, how is this not Mike Malone 2.0? Because Vivek Ranadive hired Mike Malone first, then brought in Pete D'Alessandro. We saw how everything played out there. Typically, Monty McNair took over and had Luke Walton and had to recommit to Luke Walton only to fire him a couple months later. Like, this is a pattern that's a bit concerning. I don't want Doug to be judged based off of that, but if you're concerned about changing your front office, you have to be concerned about making Doug Christie your full-time head coach without that front office making that decision.
Yeah. I don't really know how else to say it, but it's going to happen again. Like, I mean, that's like, Doug Christie's going to be the coach moving forward. He's earned it. 19-11 so far through 30 games exactly. Like you said, I mean, he kind of saved a sinking ship in a way. I mean, I still, whatever. We can do a whole nother podcast on if Mike Brown could have had a similar result or whatever. But
Sure.
I do agree with you that there's like the thing that Doug brought that I think a lot of coaches that would have walked into that situation wouldn't have thought of is like someone would have walked in and tried to be super X's and O's and try to figure out on the floor what is wrong. I think the thing that Doug does that is different and that is just unique to him is he's a people person, and he, I think, managed to save the locker room. Like I think he managed to not have those players quit on him in a season where it was just floundering. And that's really the credit to Doug, that, besides the X's and O's, which we just laid out in that Denver game, like he's very capable of doing. From a people person perspective, he is the number one guy that I would want to try and fix a locker room. He was the number one guy that I might pick just from a vibes perspective to like bar rescue some NBA locker room, walk in and just kind of figure out all the warts and get everything to a stable position. But that's not even, I don't know if the front office is going to stay or leave. But it's more of a statement of, I know for a fact Doug Christie is going to be this team's coach next year, and that just is what it is. Like, if Monty and West stay, great. They're not. I just don't even think it's like the GM's decision at this point. I just think it's above them. And is that saying it's Vivek's decision? I guess in a way, but it to me just feels like it's the only thing that I think you can confidently say after trading your franchise player, and who knows what other ramifications come of that this offseason. I think Doug is the thing that kind of makes you still feel like Doug is frankly at this point the heart of the organization. Like if you take Doug Christie out, that is really a culture shift. And if you keep Doug, there's a sense of, well, that feeling is still here. And I think I think that's the main reason why I just feel like Doug is definitely going to stay, because there is no stability right now. You lost your coach, you lost your franchise player, you might lose your front office. To me, Doug Christie is the only thing that has any semblance of a Kings identity right now, and I just don't think they can afford to lose it.
That's another thing to keep an eye out for on Friday night, tomorrow night too, is Doug and De'Aaron Fox had a great relationship.
Yeah.
But if Fox tries to step to his guys, Doug might say a thing or two in Fox's direction too. Like that, we know how Doug is. So, man, I can't wait. Tomorrow night's going to be emotional. It's going to be fun. Watkins, I will see you there. Of course, you can follow all the work that Chris Watkins does on the Return of the Roar podcast with Frankie and Brendan. All the graphics that you see from SacTown Sports, Chris Watkins is the man behind that. And anytime I can get Chris here on Locked On Kings, it's a real treat. So, Chris, I will see you tomorrow night, my man. Thank you for making this happen.
Thank you, Matt, and appreciate it. I'm going to plug also every Tuesday. We just started it this past Tuesday. Brendan, Frankie, and myself will be going live 6 p.m. every single Tuesday, AM 1140 SacTown Sports. You can also check it out on YouTube.
This is a big deal because SacTown Sports used to have a Kings talk show that was hosted by Jason Ross, Henry Turner, and Katie Christensen. It was once a week, and it was a fantastic show, and they haven't had that for years. This is that coming back, a pure Kings hour-long talk show that's going to happen every single week. So tune in to the Return of the Roar show every Tuesday, you said, right? Every
Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Every Tuesday at 6. I'll be there. Chris, appreciate you, my man.
Yes, always, Matt. Thank you.